Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Education, SOE, Master's Degree Programs, Master of Arts, Distance Education, MAID, Second Year, MDE 416 Curriculum Development for Distance Education, Block-5 Curriculum Development Experiences, Unit 3, Technical and Vocational Education.
Editor's note: technical and vocational education through distance mode is the development of the 80s and many universities and polytechnic, and more so industrial, government and private sectors provide technical and vocational education in a wide spectrum of skill-based and higher degree-oriented areas through Open Learning, the Open Learning Agency of UK, RMIT of Australia, Open Polytechnic of New Zealand and IGNOU are best examples of this. In this unit we have chosen an article on developing generic work skills through distance education by Mark S. Chambers, John C. Clift, and Linda Sissons. The article was chosen because it discusses an experience of formulating a project on curriculum design and the development, implementation, and evaluation of a program in technical and vocational education. The authors have expressed their conviction that technical and vocational learning can be successfully imparted through distance education. They have explained the need for imparting generic skills and thereafter given their suggestions as to the ways and means and the steps needed for developing generic skills among learners through distance education. The authors have referred to the changing socioeconomic environment for technical education in this context, and have explained how in the area of technical and vocational education, there is a growing need to train students to perform Spec-C jobs towards preparing them to adapt to rapid changes in an uncertain professional environment. For this purpose, technical and vocational education now emphasizes multi-skills training for the service sector rather than the traditional training for a Spec-C trade career. The curriculum specialists are thus required to identify key emerging competencies which will be required by all citizens to enable them to perform life roles and to adapt to constant change. In this context, the Open Polytechnic of New Zealand, TOPNZ, decided to design the curriculum of its Bachelor's of Applied Science course in such a way that the learner develops generic skills at all levels of self-management, conceptual skills, creative problem-solving, holistic thinking, and self-directed learning skills. The basic consideration for the design and development of the courses was that students should not learn theory by rote but should be able to apply it in a new context. The earlier practice of structuring courses around theoretical knowledge was to be abandoned, because education built upon the content model did not produce graduates with skills as required in the workplace. The RST step in this project was to identify those generic skills which were needed to obtain evidence that a student had acquired the skills of self-management, conceptual skills, creative problem-solving, holistic thinking, and self-directive learning skills, etc. The second step was to implement the courses in a way that could be coherent in terms of course and program design. Coherence was viewed at two levels, viz., external coherence and internal coherence. External coherence implied the way an individual course complemented other courses to provide a meaningful program, whereas internal coherence implied the way a course hung together internally by linking its content presentation and assessment framework with the learning outcomes. At this stage, program-based learning was the principal strategy in the design of courses contributing to the degree. The third step was to utilize formative and summative evaluation principles at appropriate stages in the curriculum transactions. For assessing generic skills, two characteristics of assessment problems, viz., their complexity and their degree of structure, were taken into account. With regard to complexity, the amount of information needed to solve the problem and the level of uncertainty confronting the students with respect to the possible solutions or cues were examined. As regards the problem of degree of structure, the complexity of the problem, the alternatives available for NDING solutions to it, and the cues indicating when an appropriate solution had been identified were analyzed. The authors have presented the views of various experts, which have been suitably linked in quoted. The article as a whole provides the guidelines needed for those who wish to impart technical and vocational education through distance education, because TOPNZ is one of the 25 polytechnics of New Zealand imparting technical and Vocational education through distance education. Now read the article carefully and attempt to solve the questions given at the end. Developing generic work skills through distance education. Introduction. The Open Polytechnic of New Zealand, TOPNZ, is one of 25 polytechnics in New Zealand delivering tertiary education. It is a distance teaching institution, offering nationally recognized qualifications from certificate to degree level. A substantial subset of the client population studies for diplomas and certificates. Targeted to clearly identi-ed vocational ELDs. A major theme in current employment literature is the call for graduates to have generic skills for use in a range of increasingly complex and dynamic life situations. This identi-ed need in the workplace provided the focus for substantive debate within our institute, culminating in the recommendation that, rather than develop a series of targeted degrees, TOPNZ should develop a generic degree providing a ladder from existing vocational diplomas. In September 1994, the New Zealand Qualifications Authority, NZQA, recommended that the proposed Bachelor of Applied Science program of the Open Polytechnic be accredited with 3 discipline majors: communication studies, environmental studies, and psychology. The RST student enrollments will occur in 1995. Our student demographic analysis indicates between 50 to 60% of the students will be in the age group 26 to 45 and in current employment. Their commitment to study will be part-time with career advancement as the primary motivational factor. This paper describes the concepts underpinning the development of the generic component of the Bachelor of Applied Science. In the context of this degree, the use of the term applied science denotes the systematic application of theoretical concepts and empirical evidence to real-world situations. Socioeconomic context for the new degree. There is a considerable body of evidence that vocational education systems throughout the world are shifting their emphasis from training students to perform Spec-C jobs toward preparing learners to adapt to rapidly changing and uncertain professional environments. For example, the OECD report Pathways for Learning, 1989, reported that in many countries technical education now emphasizes multi-skills training for the service sector rather than the traditional training for a Spec-C trade career. Hayworth, 1992, describes this shift as a facet of a post-industrial revolution, which is driven by rapidly evolving information technologies and the changed social organizations they produce. The 1991 U.S. Department of Labor Scans report took a similar view and identi-ed the globalization of business activities as a cause of uncertain future job needs. Hayworth contends that as a consequence of this post-industrial revolution, the supposed dichotomy between general and vocation education has ceased to exist. Rather, Hayworth sees a set of key competencies emerging which will be required by all citizens to enable them to perform life roles and to adapt to constant change. In this new environment, Hayworth believes, discipline studies should be within a context that enables learners to be competent in their work. Other commentators such as Wodich, 1977, have urged that what is wanted from the disciplines for the general education mission is their utility in developing student capabilities rather than discipline integrity. In New Zealand, Kunsi, 1993, in relation to science graduates, averred that many current vocational degrees are too narrow in education they provide. For example, he argues that while a targeted degree, e.g. telecommunications, may meet a current market demand, graduates will not be prepared for other work should the market for that specialization diminish. It was in this context that TOPNZ addressed the design of its B Applied Science. Our guiding principle is to foster in our learners the following generic skills at all levels: self-management, conceptual skills, creative problem-solving, holistic thinking, self-directed learning skills and literacy. Considerations for design. Broadening professional specialisms. The need to broaden the education offered in Spec-C disciplines has been extensively documented. Linton, 1991. Traditionally in New Zealand, core courses called add-ons are intended to achieve a broadening of professional programs by preparing learners to function efficiently as managers. As Linton notes, the add-on approach is criticized because courses intended to broaden specialized curricula are targeted for Spec-C vocations, e.g. economics. For engineers, for example, The skills required for economic decision-making are generic, and should be taught in a manner that enables engineers to communicate with economists, Chambers and Clift. 1994. Furthermore, the teaching of such add-on courses typically follows the theoretical approach, characteristic of the courses of professional programs. The result is that often, the best students can repeat theory learned by rote, but are unable to apply it in any new context. As Hayne, 1993, has summarized it, the student's learning may have been comprehensive, but it has not been comprehending. Acquiring performance skills. Traditionally, professional degrees have been structured on the premise that as students acquires more theoretical knowledge about a subject, they will become more competent to act as professionals in that discipline. However, the widely documented discontent of employers with the thinking and transfer skills of New Zealand graduates suggests that education built upon this content model does not adequately produce graduates with the skills required in the workplace. Furthermore, students have long complained about the amount of information they are expected to learn, leading to reproductive practices rather than the opportunity to develop a deeper understanding of the material. The level of understanding a person has about a subject is a function of how well they relate new knowledge to existing knowledge within their memory and so create interconnections. Ausable, 1968. It is this ability to create interconnections that enables people to think about potential applications in new contexts. People with such a level of understanding question facts and operations and come to recognize gaps in their knowledge. Critical to the acquisition of higher level performance skills is the ability of a student to deep process knowledge. The work of Biggs and Collis, 1982, in researching teaching objectives built on levels of development in higher thinking. The Solo taxonomy indicates that students must learn how to engage in the deep processing of knowledge. Generic course design. The importance of prior knowledge as prerequisite for meaningful learning and for the achievement of advanced level skills has been a consistent NDING of research studies over many years. Martin, 1988. Hayne, 1993, advocates as the RST step in motivating learners to value their courses, the presentation of a problem that is recognized by each student as meaningful. Hayne urges teachers to draw on their students' prior knowledge and experience. Our objectives for the generic component of the degree are to encourage students to seek meaning and function through inferences drawn from experience or to subject ideas to a search for hidden possibilities. In structuring a generic degree using a wide range of building blocks including certificates and diplomas, it is essential that the degree exhibits coherence. In terms of course and program design, coherence can be viewed at two levels. 1. The way an individual course complements other courses in providing a meaningful program, external coherence, and 2. The way a course hangs together internally, internal coherence, by linking the content, presentation and assessment framework of a course with the learning outcomes. Hall, 1992. Assessment principles. An interactive model of competency views the outcomes of learning as an interaction between the individual learner, his or her knowledge and beliefs, and the context in which the knowledge is applied. Hodkinson, 1992. For assessing generic skills, this interactive model was judged to be more useful than a model which assesses competency as a series of elements. Persuasive evidence indicates that elements taught as such do not add up to a whole. The desired competency is more than the sum of knowledge, understanding and context. Hodkinson, 1992. Central to the TOPNZ application of this interactive model for assessing generic skills are two characteristics of assessment problems: their complexity and their degree of structure. Assessment problems can vary in their complexity, i.e., the amount of information needed to solve a problem, and the level or uncertainty confronting the student with respect to possible solutions or cues as the correctness of any one solution. Many problems formulated for students can be described as well-structured. Simon, 1973. Such problems contain all the information necessary for the student to achieve a solution. Snow, 1980, describes the ability to solve such problems as crystallized intelligence, representing the skills to do well in a formal educational setting. In contrast, UID intelligence is that which enables a person to succeed in the Dynamic would outside of the educational setting. Problems demanding UID intelligence are seldom well structured. Typically, such problems are complex and, in Simon's phrase, ill-structured, i.e., they lack certainty as to what is to be solved, the range of alternatives available for NDING solutions and cues, indicating when an appropriate solution has been identified. The guiding principle for drafting assessment tasks within the degree program is to present our students problems of progressive complexity and uncertainty, which require a demonstration of increasing applications of UID intelligence. Problem-based learning. In developing our B Applied Science program, we sought to adhere to Whitrock's dictum, 1977, that methods of teaching should be designed to stimulate students actively to construct meaning from their own experience rather than stimulating them to reproduce the knowledge of others. A growing body of educational research indicates that problem-based learning, PBL, may be the most effective method of stimulating students to construct meaning from their own experience. E.g. Vilkines and Carden, 1990. The basic principle of PBL is to facilitate understanding by presenting learners with tasks which resemble those the learners will be confronted by their professional activities. Rouse, 1990. Typically, such tasks will entail considerable uncertainty and permit many, and in some instances, even diametrically opposed, valid solutions. In problem-based learning, understanding of a body of knowledge is achieved through deriving solutions to a series of tasks of increasing complexity. The students are challenged to discover what information and theory as tools of analysis. They will need to discover possible solutions such tasks. Hain, 1993. A null task may inspire the student to re-ECT on the process and solutions. Problem-based learning stands in considerable contrast to conventional subject-based learning, in which a student typically is required to read a chapter of text, is asked a series of questions about the material or given a very structured problem to solve using the set reading material. Such subject-based learning techniques are widely regarded as inadequate. Gibbs, 1991. The dichotomy between subject-based learning and PBL is the difference between attempting to memorize the subject matter and attempting to understand and apply the knowledge. Gibbs, 1991. The essential distinction is one of a quest for coherence versus knowledge orientation on the part of the learner. Burns, et al., 1990. Coherence is achieved when students achieve an appreciation for the order within a subject matter which they can use to understand the meanings of terms and causes of events. By contrast, a knowledge orientation is concerned with the memorization of facts and rules which often can be easily tested in a superficial assessment of academic achievement. Gibbs, 1991, has identified 4 features which foster a deep approach to learning. L. Intrinsic student motivation based on involvement in the selection process. L. Learner activity by planning, reaction and processing of information. Interaction with others to solve problems. And L. Integration of new information into existing knowledge and experience to form a well-structured knowledge base. These features are characteristic of PBL techniques. Ferrier, 1990, responds to the commonly implied criticism of PBL, in the form of the question as to whether students may miss important areas of knowledge, by pointing out that implicit in this question is the assumption that there are no gaps in the traditional curriculum. He concludes that the careful, integrated planning needed to support PBL can potentially minimize gaps and redundancies. Implementation. Practice within courses. Problem-based learning is the principal strategy in the design of courses contributing to the degree. In all courses where generic skills are practiced, the formative assessment will focus on tasks such as reaction and expression of understanding of the nuance of factors within a given situation, both in oral and written expression. Summative assessment guidelines. Recognition of prior learning will be available to the students for all generic courses. Webb et al., 1993. The criteria guiding summative assessment of our students follows the work of Eisner, 1993. L. Tasks used to assess skill and knowledge should re-ECT the tasks to be encountered in the workplace. L. Such tasks should reveal how a learner solves a problem rather than focus on the learner's solutions. L. Assessment tasks should give students the opportunity to display their understanding of the connecting features of the concepts they have explored, and have more than one acceptable solution. L task design should permit students to select a form of presentation to display what has been learnt. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next video with the next chapter.